an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood. Episode 32, The Fuhrer's Son. In this episode, Al and Ed wind up unexpectedly as guests in the Fuhrer's home. It's super uncomfortable. I don't like any of this at all. And I don't really, just the whole idea of him having a family, like, what are we doing? What is this? Why? I don't understand. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you again to Max for commissioning this episode. So, oh my God, I'm sorry. I just saw Michael in the chat. I know my dad jokes could be irritating, so today I will try to make Fuhrer of them. And Damien is busting out the duct tape. Thank you, Damien, for doing this public service. It's appreciated. Michael, you're on probation. It would be fun if I could actually put people on probation in the chats on Crowdcast to have it be like you're blocked from commenting for the next 5 or 10 minutes only, so that it basically you've been warned. I would do that to you so many times, Michael. Ryan says it is way scarier that he has a family than if he didn't for some reason. Agreed. There is so much about the Fuhrer having a family that is, it's like a combination of a variety of factors. For me, it's first of all the fact that they are in danger, it feels to me, in some sort of nebulous way that I can't even really explain because I don't have any evidence, but just the fact that they are this closely linked to a fucking homunculi feels like bad news bears for them. I don't think that they are a target. I don't think that they really are meant to have anything to do with any of this. But it just seems like you want to be as far away from this dude as possible. And them being as close as they are. It's also sort of weird because we know that so many of the people who work for him in the military are aware of what he is now. But evidently his own family, they still seem to have no idea. And I find that part kind of fascinating, that everybody around them can have the information. And nobody has ever spilled the beans to them, which I do believe that you would be able to pull off easily. But it's just kind of humiliating in its way. You know, it's like everybody at work knowing that your significant other is having an affair or something. And then you find out later and everybody fucking knew, but nobody said anything. It's got that kind of energy to it. It just feels like it's embarrassing. And then there is the fact that they could be used as bargaining chips either by people who are trying to attack the Fuhrer, and we know from, having actually seeing a conversation about this, that it wouldn't work. Because Bradley is not he has no real affection for them. But people could think that it would work. They wouldn't be aware before starting that it would be a failure. So these folks would wind up being in danger anyway. Whether or not it works is sort of irrelevant to somebody starting out the mission. And so I feel like that is yet another risk they're under that has nothing to do really even with him being a homunculus so much as being married to somebody in his position at all would be dangerous. Then there's the fact that giving him a family feels really pointed. It feels like this is something that was tactically seemed like a good idea. We should do this because it will make you look like more of a person. And it could simply be that simple. It makes you look like a family man, which is a good impression to give to the people so that you're more relatable and they trust you and they see you as a paternal figure. All of that might be true. But there's also an aspect in there of it feels like there is There is no need for the Fuhrer to worry that much about his public image. It doesn't seem to me, because nobody votes for him, right? It doesn't, like, I am still kind of fuzzy on the details of how he came into power, because it has been said, I think he says to Roy in the conversation they have where he's like telling Roy the whole story about how he was created, he says something about how the homunculi have been the ones behind the rise of Amestris since the very beginning, right? And if that's so, was every other person in power before him? How old is Amestris meant to be? He hasn't been put into the first ever Fuhrer position, has he? I don't really, like, I don't know the history, and I'm not sure if I'm meant to, like, know the history or if this is really anything. But I just don't get the impression that Bradley needs to win people over, because it seems like he's just given the job and nobody really gets a say. And maybe that's not how it works, but that's sort of like where I'm butting up against what could potentially be the other purpose of his family. Like, if it isn't about making him look relatable and like a family man and a public image, is there something else that they have in store for this family at some point? And what if they found out what he actually is? Would that mean that they were in danger? Or would he just like basically be like, well, I guess the jig is up, and he tells them everything the way that he did with Roy? Because it's a very different thing for your wife to find out, you know? I mean, I really have no idea. I mean, for all I know, his wife already knows, but I don't think so. I don't get that impression. I feel like if she did, the conversation they had would have gone really differently once they were all together in that room. So I'm going to go with that she does not know. And I haven't got like a lot of evidence, just the overall vibe that we're getting from them, for me, does not say, I am aware that my husband is a maniac killing machine with no soul. You know, but there have been plenty of women in history who have known that, and they have still been able to act perfectly normal. So who am I to say? All right. So let's start this episode off. The initial thing that I want to mention is Kimblee and his role in all of this. He doesn't have a lot to do this episode. He's like in charge of the search for Scar, but he isn't on the ground yet. He's still sort of in the office and waiting for reports back. And eventually, once all attempts to track Scar down through soldiers, essentially, don't pan out, then it seems like Kimblee is about to get his hands dirty. But up until this point, he is just using the resources that he has to try and like pin this guy somewhere so that he doesn't really have to do it. And Kimblee is just such a weird, like, I am looking forward to getting to know him as a character a little bit better. He just seems competent in a way that I always get mad about when like a bad guy is competent. Competence is really rare, you know? And it always just feels extremely insulting when the person who winds up with so much of it is on the wrong side. It's like there's little enough of it to fucking go around as it is. We don't need to be handing it over to bad people. So I like, don't like to say it, but I kind of am looking forward to like more scenes with him, because a competent bad guy can be really, really fun. You know, I mean, it can be also extremely frustrating, especially if the bad guy is otherwise sort of boring. Kimblee does not seem like he is going to be boring. That doesn't seem like something that we're going to have to worry about with him. The fucking little, like, stunt he pulled with the warden of the jail and putting what looked like a bomb on his wrist. I mean, it really seems to me he has got things. He has got a personality, and he is going to be flamboyant with the way he handles things. So I'm just going to hope that we have somebody who is both competent and charismatic, and try and enjoy it as much as I can, despite them being an absolute fucking murdering lunatic. Okay, so back to the start of the episode. Ed and Al are still trying to track down Mei Chang, and they have found an old woman who has a cat that looks very close to the panda. And this cat, guys, this cat spits off to the side like it's fucking chewing tobacco. It is the weirdest animal. I don't even know what's supposed to be happening here. But it was pretty funny because it like looks close enough that you can understand, but it's not like as soon as you really get a closer look, it's like, no. Michael says, I agree. Kimblee has been very interesting so far. I think that's supposed to be a pun, but I'll be honest, Michael, I'm not getting that one. Wait, are you trying to do a sulfur pun because of the fire? Is that what you were after? Look, Michael, I think a lot of the time your puns, while terrible, are still kind of good, but that one's a real step down. I think you really need to like workshop things a little bit more. I don't know. Oh, people are saying his first name is Sulf. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, I think it's even worse then. Sorry, Michael, look, work harder. All right? I need you to run some of these by a committee before you bring them out there into the public eye, because you could do better. I know you can. I believe in you. Okay, so Ed and Al are just like, we can't afford to be wasting any more of our time. I think that we are just not going to be able to find this little girl. Like, I don't know, maybe we should just give up. And as Al is wondering where she is, we cut to her walking with her little panda on her shoulder, carrying a bag of groceries. And she's going through, she's like walking down a platform in a train station. And this old lady kind of bumps into her. And it was such a weird moment because as soon as this old lady bumped into her, I was like, that is definitely a dude in drag. And it was a moment of me going like, wait, maybe she's just animated that way. But the show, like, and this isn't even specific to this show, but like anime has a way of drawing old ladies most of the time. And this just didn't feel right to me. But then they have their little interaction. The old lady is like, I've never seen a cat like that before, as she collects her stuff and goes away. And it seems like that's the end of the interaction with the old lady. So I was like, well, maybe it's, meant to just be like a funny little bit that we're doing, which is fine. Like that can be a thing. And I get the impression, like once we find out later that it is a dude in drag, it's actually the guy that's going to go and meet Roy later. This guy is asking Mei Chang all these questions about like where she's from, what she's doing here. Are you sightseeing? There's not much to look at in East City. No, I'm just here transferring trains. I'm heading north right now. And it all felt like purposely asking because of the fact that this dude in drag, allegedly, as far as I was thinking at the moment, knew who she was and was trying to get more information. But then later on, when he finally goes and talks to Roy, it seems pretty clear he didn't know that Mei Chang was important when he was talking to her. So it just is an actual coincidence, unless I'm mistaken. If you guys want to correct me on that, like, that's fine. But it really does seem like did genuinely bump into her by accident because he didn't know, there was just it was unclear because there are soldiers here in the train station and they're talking about looking for Scar and the fact that like he still hasn't let up, like it's a weird moment. Scar is clearly there. He's in like a trench coat and has his hood pulled up. These soldiers are just straight up bad at their jobs, just FYI. But when like the old lady does not pursue her and doesn't say anything to the soldiers, I was like, oh, okay. Maybe she was just drawn like that, and this isn't what I thought at all. And eventually, once they like meet up, I believe that he's going to be able to give Roy some information about her and what they were doing, where they were headed. But I'm not sure how accurate that information will still be by then, because things have really kind of gone away. They have gone in a different direction by then. They are... she says we're transferring trains, but they wind up underground, like they're at like in a subway tunnel kind of thing. I think it's meant to be the sewers. And their sewers look a lot nicer than our sewers. I just have to mention that because it's been more than once that I have to remind myself what we're seeing is supposed to be a sewer, because I have never seen a sewer that size with that much room and like that well lit ever. But also, I don't know, maybe some sewers are just really nice. I know it's not the case for us in Texas, though. I will just say that. So they, like, the soldiers wind up pursuing him down there, and he uses his alchemy to, like, pull a giant block of cement out of the ceiling above them and block their way so they are able to get away. This is one of a couple escapes that they are able to make. And then we jump back to Kimblee, who is looking at a map, and he's just trying to figure out exactly where it is they might be trying to go. And I couldn't help but laugh because he draws a line, or he draws his finger over a like train line on the map, and then it just says West City, and he just says West, huh? And I don't know why I found this so funny, guys. But just the fact that it's just West City feels so lazy. And that's not even like the fault of the writer, because low-key, that is sort of how we actually name places in life. We have New Haven. That's the first one. That was south. Then we had West Haven, which is, you guessed it, west of New Haven. We have East Haven, which is, can you guess? It's east of New Haven. And we have... yes, indeed. North Haven. It is north of New Haven. There's no South Haven. I will say that. New Haven is South Haven. And I'm talking about Connecticut, by the way. But this is all very real. We have a Westfield, and we also have a Middlefield, which I find particularly funny. There's just like something about how incredibly lazy these names are that has always been like, really? That's the best we could do? But then we've got names that are like, they tried a little bit too hard, like here in Texas, a place that we drive through very frequently is called Flower Mound. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, that sounds filthy. I just think that definitely is like a weird romance novel euphemism, and I don't like it at all. So I'm just going to say no to that one. I would prefer an East Haven to a Flower Mound. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, so it's just West City. And he's saying Scar must be getting desperate, which could be actually pretty good for us. He's leaving us a good trail. And I'm sort of wondering, like, is he, or do you think he is? We'll see. And he grabs his fucking white fedora and says, all right, it's time to get to work, and strides out. And I was just like, dude, you and that goddamned outfit, truly, that is a fucking look. And as they head up the stairs into the train station, who should be leaving but the old lady? And we only see her from like above and from her feet down, or her feet up. And when she passes Kimblee, he says, a suspicious woman, but that isn't my job. And this is one of those moments that this is what's sort of making me go, okay, I don't like it. He is too competent. Why? Why is she suspicious? It doesn't seem like there's a real reason. It just seems like there is some sort of gut instinct reaction that he is having. And for me, that's like way worse than there being real evidence, because it's almost like magic. It's almost like there's some sixth sense that he has where he's like, yeah, no, that's not kosher. That's not what it looks like at all. And all that saves him is the fact that Kimblee is just like, yeah, that's not on me though. I don't need to pursue that. Guys, that's so frightening. If the only thing that's saving you from somebody who is definitely like, he has seen through some of your shit, is the fact that they have decided that that is not their area, that feels just so intimidating to me. You know? Thank God that Kimblee is extremely focused. That's all I gotta say. So then we go to Hughes's grave, and Roy is standing there waiting, and this old lady comes up and starts talking about how the funeral is depressing. When you reach my age, you think about being you in the box instead of watching it go by. And Roy is just trying to be like, oh, you can't worry about that yet. You're still plenty young to me. And he looks over at her, and she gives him like a little kiss. And then all of a sudden he realizes it's General Grumman and is like, oh my God, wait, what? And it's a really good moment of just like Roy putting two and two together. And Grumman eventually is like, I really just thought that you had called me out to sort of whine to me about everything that is going on. But clearly what Roy's objective here is actually to get Grumman involved in what they're doing. But I will come back to that. For now, we go to the library. Ed and Al are trying to see what they can find in the library about alchemy, because they can't find this little girl, so they're just going to have to figure out another source. But as we find out, there isn't a lot in the library about it, which I find kind of interesting, because it's either A, because it's simply not practiced here, and so it's not as big a part of the culture. Or it could be because somebody has gotten rid of some of the information about how it works. Or it could be that not a lot is like known about it at all. Like alchemy might be even more rare than either of them realize. There's just a lot of reasons why there isn't as much info. I am sort of thinking, because it's tempting for me to be like, oh, maybe somebody does know and they like, took the information out of here. But based on the fact that the father didn't seem to understand why Scar and Mei Chang both were able to still use alchemy after whatever it was that he did to shut alchemy down, I feel like if I were going to say information was removed from the library, the person that I would have said had done it would have been either father or Bradley. And if the father didn't know why their alchemy was still working, alchemy was still working, whatever, I think it's safe to say that alchemy has not been at the forefront of any of his research or experimentation. So I think it might just be, it's sort of an unknown thing. And especially at one point, Ed says, maybe we're just going to have to go to Xing, and it's going to be such a huge journey across the desert, and that sounds like it's going to really suck. That sort of, cemented for me that the methods of transportation aren't great. I kind of was under the impression both with Ling and with Mei Chang, that they like took sort of a weird route to get here because they were like either hiding from somebody or because they were on foot and they didn't have a lot of resources. Like Ling keeps mooching, which means I've been sort of assuming that he has embarked on this mission without much money. So I'd just been sort of thinking, okay, they came here like on foot because they didn't have the resources to use whatever the normal transportation would have been for them. But it really does seem like there isn't any other transportation. Like, Ed doesn't mention we could take the train, but it would be too dangerous. It just seems like there is no traveling between Amestris and Qing almost at all. And if that is true, it would make a lot of sense why Alkahestry isn't much of a thing. If it's that far, and it's not just an ocean between you, but a desert, which is a really different animal, it could really be understandable that very little has traveled culturally across that expanse. So, okay, we jump back to Roy and Grumman. And Roy's agreeing that, like, yeah, he really undermined me and took all my people away. And Grumman says, not too long ago I came to Central, and Raven asked me something. He asked how I would feel about a corps of immortal soldiers. And the animation in this moment is really something, because it's drawn from this angle. I'm going to screen share this for a minute because I think this is really well done. It's always like the animation in the show is just well done, period. But this moment, it's done as if he's like really looking down on you from the POV and holds out his hand, and then the camera sort of zeroes in on his teeth as he smiles, and it's really threatening. And I was just like, what the fuck? So yeah, I really liked that moment. But it's obviously, this guy was sort of kind of asking Grumman if he wanted to be part of things. And Grumman says that what he replied was that the idea of immortality was ridiculous. And he just ended the conversation and says, not long after that, I was transferred. Which is really interesting because I guess what they're doing there, because for me, okay, if you tell somebody completely out of context, would you like an immortal soldier? I feel like that person saying immortality is not a thing isn't really unreasonable. Most people are going to react that way. I wonder, what were they expecting him to do? Just be like, of course I would be interested. Like, that just sounds crazy. That's not the way to present it. You don't pitch it like that. But evidently, other men in this, like, military are on board. So if that was the way that they pitched it, it seems to have worked for some people. And it's just kind of wild to me that that was all it took, and then he got, like, demoted, essentially. You didn't even try to win the guy over? Or was there sort of an energy when he said that immortality is bullshit that made you feel like he wasn't going to cooperate? You know, it might have been, like, something a little bit deeper than that. I don't know. But, yeah, I just, like, found it really funny. It's like somebody coming up to you and just being like, hey, how would you feel about a magic lamp with a genie that grants you 3 wishes? Like, what would you say to that? That sounds like it's not real, you know? I mean, for me, I would say, that sounds like it's not real, but also it wouldn't hurt to try it, so hand it over. But you know what I'm saying. So yeah, he says, after that I was transferred and essentially demoted. And since then, I've been stuck with this job of cleaning up the messes in the eastern area. And this is when Roy starts talking about the place, the Loire, I'm trying to remember the name of this, the pronunciation, pronunciation for the town. It's Loire. And I want to say Lior, but that would mean that the I would have to be before the O, so it's Loire. Is it Loire? That doesn't sound right. But anyway, that's where the priest was that was like trying to do his whole scam. And Roy says Lior fell into chaos after Fullmetal uncovered his plan. And I don't feel like we actually got to see the aftermath of that. So I found this kind of interesting. Oh no, it is I-O. My bad. Lior fell into chaos, but let's see. I'm trying to find the exact spot where he says this because I'm trying to get it, the quote. Lior fell into chaos after that, but from the outset, forces from the east acted quickly. They brought the uprising under control. But then the forces from Central came in, and all of the Eastern forces were dismissed. And the peace in... See, okay, it's the subtitles. Because the subtitles said Loire earlier, then it said Lior, and the I was first, and now it's saying Loire here. So, okay, it's not just my imagination. I think it is Lior, and they're just like they're just transposing the vowels when they're doing the subtitles. But yeah, and then the peace was shattered after the central forces appeared. Okay, yeah, because after in the subtitle is missing an R. It's just after. So clearly somebody was not really proofreading this very well. There it is. But yeah, so that I thought was really interesting. Essentially, Grumman had been put in, or not Grumman, but he says the Eastern forces had been the ones that were supposed to be dealing with what happened in Lior. But then when Central got involved, the peace completely, got fucked up, and it feels purposeful. Like they were trying to rile them up. Like they dismissed the Eastern forces on purpose because now they were going to step in and bring the place to a boiling point again. And again, I don't really understand what we're doing because the priest, clearly he had been supposed to be working for the homunculi. He wasn't himself a homunculi, but Lust shows up and is essentially like, you fucked up and got caught, and takes care of him with her scary, knife hands. And what was it that he was supposed to be doing? He was presenting himself as if he were kind of a messiah figure, like he was a saint. And does that have to do with what they were trying to do? Is that even relevant? Was it even supposed to be part of the original mission that they had sent him on? Why would they want people to think he was a saint? What do they get out of it? And this is where I keep ending up is what is the end result? The idea of just, we want to rule the world. The Fuhrer is already ruling the world, low-key. Amestris feels like America in a lot of ways, where they seem like they're of the biggest sort of central power in this area, even if they are surrounded by other countries. And that might just be because we're focused on that POV where we're in Amestris, but nevertheless, you know what I'm saying? It just doesn't, I don't really understand why we want the peace to be broken. What is it that we're doing with the fact that people are being violent? Is that feeding something? Is the violence itself the end result that they're looking for? Because I'm thinking that the violence is supposed to spur another thing to happen. That's the first step in a series of steps. It might not be. Maybe the violence is all we need, but why? What are we trying to do? Where are we trying to get to? And if they wanted to stir up violence, why is that? What the priest was doing was the opposite. The priest was bringing everybody together and sort of making them all think that they're God's eye was upon their area, their city, So obviously the priest's death caused them to dramatically change whatever their objective was, it seems like. And why is that? There's just a lot about the, like, way that things are going that I'm like, is it just this for the sake of it? Do we just want there to be discord and violence? And that is just like the goal is for everybody to be constantly at each other's throats and that's it? Because that just doesn't quite feel like enough. Let's see. Kyle says he was stirring up conflict and rebellion. Damien says he says that he wants them to believe they're immortal so they could rebel against the government. Wait, who says that? This is when we get into the conversation with Grumman, by the way, where he's just like, I wish that he could have just held off because I'm so close to retirement. And Roy is like, yeah, bullshit. You're not somebody who can just like sit by on the sidelines. You don't want to be out of this. You want to get into it. And you have a bunch of like hardened veterans who fought in Ishval. You know that they really care too. And Grumman just starts laughing and says, you got me. I do kind of want to, like, I thought that you just wanted me to come here so that you could cry on my shoulder and ask for advice, but it turns out you're trying to, like, enlist me, basically. And I can't help but be interested because that feels like exactly my jam. Let's see. Damien says the priest. Oh, the priest says that. Okay. I thought you were saying that Grumman says that. I got you. He wants them to believe they're immortal so they can rebel against the government during his motive rant to Ed. Okay, so he's working with the homunculi, but he is trying to instigate a rebellion against the Fuhrer, who is also a homunculi. I am that is so confusing. Why? I want to know. What are we doing? Why do we want, like, again, it just, maybe it is just that we feed off of the division and conflict and we just want everybody to be constantly at battle. But it just feels like there has to be like something bigger picture there that I'm missing. 'Cause that's a weird, like, I don't know. Like, and if the homunculi are working with him, is it supposed to be like initially Wrath seemed so outside of everything that was going on with the others that I almost could have believed that they weren't in accord, you know, that some of the homunculi there was like a bit of a schism and maybe lust and envy wanted a different thing than what King Bradley wanted, Wrath. But the way that we have seen them interact since then, it doesn't seem that way. They appear to be all on the same side. That's not to say that they get along all the time, because clearly. But why then? What are we doing? I don't understand. Damien says sips tea. Okay, so then I'm not supposed to know. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure of that. So yeah, this little moment with the two of them, with Roy and Grumman, is honestly pretty cute. And Roy says, maybe we can get a cup of tea together somewhere. And Grumman says, no, I appreciate the invitation, but I have to be somewhere. And then he spots the drawing that Roy is carrying around of the little panda and kind of goes, And I'm like, okay, here we go. But it cuts away and we don't actually see anything about how that conversation goes. So back to the library. Ed and Al are both really frustrated because none of the books they're looking through seem to have any of the information that they want. And then Ed is like looking at this shelf and he gets so startled and he looks up and Armstrong is staring down at him from above the shelf with the fucking like sparkles around his head and everything. I swear to God. aha. And he just pushes the two giant shelves of books aside like they're a pair of double doors, walks through them, and then pushes them back together behind him like they're doors. I love this because here's why. Armstrong is very strong. He can move these two giant things. But what does he do? He returns them to the place they are supposed to be. He is very considerate of the fact that these librarians would have to set things to rights if he just left it that way. And I feel like a lot of super strong men would just push open, walk through, and leave that shit as is right there. And Armstrong? No. He is considerate. Armstrong is somebody who would be like, if you married Armstrong, he would fold the laundry. Armstrong would make sure to put his dirty dishes in the dishwasher and his socks in the hamper. That is the kind of man he is. And this is why he is husband material. Okay? So I love him, and just these little moments for me are just very revealing. And I love when Ed starts yelling at him and he's like, it is a library. Can you quiet down? And this is when he crouches and says, I hear that you're trying to find this Chinese girl. And Ed's like, what? Yeah, wait, how do you know that? Armstrong's like, yeah, Roy told us that she's headed north according to eyewitnesses. So Ed is like, all right, perfect. And now I know where to go. And I'm like, I mean, north feels very general. But considering that he had absolutely no luck in the library, I can understand why he's seizing on literally whatever he can. So he starts to gather his books up and put everything away, and Armstrong pulls out this envelope and is like, you have to take this. And guys, I would like to draw your attention to the seal that is pressed into the envelope. Because this seal, I'm going to screen share again, looks like, and I'm certain that this is what it is. Now, it might not be for the whole, like the Armstrong family crest, but it definitely feels like it's meant for Armstrong himself. And I'm not sure if you guys like saw this and, you know, but he has what looks like a little handlebar mustache, and then the swoop above it that I believe is meant to be like his little tuft of hair on his head. That is the symbol, is just like the mustache and the swoop of hair. And I think that's all it's meant to be. I could be misunderstanding this completely, but that is what it looks like. And I love it so much. It's high impact. Immediately you get what he's doing. I just found this super, super funny. So yeah, he says this is a letter of introduction. It might not be of much use, but you need it. You might need it to see her. And Ed says, who? And he says, even further north than Northern Command, you'll find an officer nicknamed the Northern Wall of Briggs, who defends our border. And, of course, Funimation is choosing now to fucking, like, get frozen. Ryan says that is 100% what it is. Okay, good. Because it was, I just, like, this is the sort of thing where I'm like, what would my symbol be then? You know? I just don't have a consistent enough particular look that I feel like I have one. I guess you could do like a couple of curls and then a pair of like cat's eye glasses and that would work. But I don't know. That's sort of, it's fine. I really do like how TV characters just kind of wear the same thing all the time and they have the same look all the time. So they are so distinctive and they have this kind of personal brand. And there's a part of me that's extremely like back and forth where I partially want a really, really strong particular brand. And then I'm like, but I like being able to really change it up too, you know? Michael says, having a signature hairstyle, pun actually not intended, is actually pretty dope. Yeah. Kyle says, wouldn't it be the lips on every Unspoiled logo? I don't, like, the logo is a thing that I feel like it doesn't look like me. Like, they're not my lips. You know what I mean? They're just a pair of lips. They're not, I don't know. That doesn't feel like if you saw them, if you looked at me and you only knew me, but you didn't listen to Unspoiled, that you would know that was supposed to be me. Do you know what I mean? But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't know. I just think that my brand outside of the show is not shh, because I'm a loudmouth. I will not shut the fuck up. So that energy of just shush doesn't seem like the energy that I actually carry in life. But I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, he says Major General Armstrong. And then the camera pans up to what I think he said that this is a woman. It's hard to tell because of the way it's drawn. But this blonde sitting on this chair looking extremely like badass. And I am extremely excited for what I'm hoping is going to be a like Viking-esque sort of broad. I'm here for it. Like, we'll see. So then we go to Fullmetal Alchemist. And when we come back, we've just got Mei Chang and Scar running from the military, and they get trapped on this bridge. Actually, I'm saying that it's Mei Chang running, but I think that's Marco with him. It's hard to tell because like every time that we see Scar, he seems to be only with one person. It might be the other dude, the guy whose name I literally never remember, Yori, but I don't know because there's supposed to be 4 of them and we only really ever see him with one other person. So I don't know how that keeps happening. But the 2 of them are on this bridge. They jump off when the train passes underneath them and there's like this big cloud of smoke from the train. And the soldiers just kind of look helplessly on as he and his compatriot ride away on the back of this train, which I believe is headed west. So this is kind of what I'm confused by is like we keep getting different stories about which direction they're heading in. We hear about the north, but then he's on this going west and I'm like, is he purposely just fucking them up to have them think that they're going in different directions? I don't know. But okay, so then we jump back to the library, and this is when this kid with big stars in his eyes comes excitedly up to Al and is like, oh my God, are you the Fullmetal Alchemist brother? This is so exciting. And because this kid is drawn so generically, I had no idea who he was because he isn't really distinctive in any way. So he gets really excited about meeting Al, and eventually Ed comes along and he's like, oh my God, are you the Fullmetal Alchemist? You're just as tiny as everybody says. And when Ed gets mad, he's like, oh my God, and you get mad about being called tiny, just like everybody says too, which honestly is really great. I loved that so much. Ed, how about you try not being so predictable, buddy? How about that? And he asks Al what he's looking into alchemy for. And no, he asked Al. And Al is like, I can't tell him that it's to like get my body back, which I guess just, you know, he doesn't want to get into the fact that he doesn't have a body with this kid. I understand. But there was a part of me that also was like, oh, and you want to keep this secret from King Bradley also, and there's a chance that, but he didn't know that this kid was Bradley's son yet, so there's that wouldn't have like played a part. And also they had asked if they still had permission to continue looking for ways to get their bodies back, and they were granted permission to do that. So as much as there are plenty of good reasons for him to not tell the truth to this kid, I just think it's genuinely, I don't want him to be I don't want to tell this kid this like tragic kind of disturbing story, which that's fair. And he claims that alkahestry is supposed to have a lot of medical uses. So we're looking into it to try and find ways to save people's lives. And I just really enjoy the way that it's animated when he says it. Like, the idea that they're trying to save people's lives is honestly so ridiculous, or so naive, or that he's just trying so hard to make this seem like it is a kind of selfless, what's the word I want? Y'all know what I'm saying. That he's just trying to do something that is good for the people instead of trying to find something specifically for himself, which, even though it is just for himself, there's nothing selfish about it. It's completely fine. So then, this is when Ed comes up and they begin, like, he says the thing about how Ed is so small. Ed begins to get really mad, and he says something like, why I oughta. And he lifts his fist with the flames dancing around his head like anime does to signify how angry he is. And then all of a sudden, these two fucking Glocks are like pressed to either side of his head. And these dudes are going, step away from Master Selim. And one of the guys has a fucking eye patch, by the way. I don't know if he needs it or if he's just like, well, King Bradley has one and it's pretty dope, so I think I'm going to get one. But it is a good moment. Or maybe it's not an eye patch. Maybe it was just from the side that he's got sunglasses and it's just like from the one angle. I think it might just be that. That would have been fun, though, if it was another eye patch guy. And they realize, like, who this kid is. So he asks them to come back to his house and meet his mom. And Ed is just frustrated because, like, they're supposed to be heading north. They had a lead, and all of this is supposed to be, like, on the road already. We're supposed to be rolling. And here they are, sitting having this weird, awkward tea with this kid and his mom in the Fuhrer's house. All of this is, like, the exact last place that they fucking want to be right now. And she tells Ed that he has been in awe of you for ages. And when they ask him about whether or not he is going to learn alchemy, he's like, yeah, and then I'm going to become a state alchemist, and then I'll be able to help my father. And I love that at first when he says, I'm going to be a state alchemist just like you, Ed is blushing and is just like, aw, shucks. And then when he says, yeah, so that I can help my father, all of a sudden, it brings, like, Ed crashing back down to earth. And he says, do you get along with your father? And I was just like, I know that probably feels innocuous to you, considering the things that you would rather be asking right now. But asking a kid if he gets along with his father, especially when you're sitting in front of his mother, that feels weird to me. Like, if I were this kid's mom, I would kind of be like, what the fuck kind of question is that, Ed asks, what kind of man is he? It just keeps, like, And Selim says, he's an amazing man. His job is more demanding than anything else in the world, and he spends every day thinking about the people of this country. And then his wife chimes in with basically like, yeah, he is away a lot. He's pretty much a workaholic, and I've always known that about him because, ever since we met, he was always devoting himself to the country. It's nothing new. But it can be kind of hard because he is not around all that much. And then she says, where women are concerned, I'm afraid he's a bit of an oaf. The first time we met, he made me so angry I actually slapped him, but it worked out for the best. He asked me out after that, and our first date was amazing. What did he do? I am dying to know. I really, really want to know. Like, and there's something about it that feels like she passed some kind of test. And, that like he tried to push her buttons to see how she'd react. And then when he got whatever reaction he was looking for, was just like, all right, well, now I am going to try and woo her. And that could be completely invented. Don't get me wrong. But because nothing about him seems like it isn't orchestrated, I can't imagine that he just met a woman and like fell for her. Like, he had to have like gone after her specifically for some reason, because it doesn't seem like he actually has any real affection for her from the way that he talked about her. Maybe he just said he didn't. Maybe he does care about her and he's just trying to act like he doesn't because he shouldn't for, the position that he's in. It's unclear to me how much like a homunculi can get past the fact that they are powered by magic and not really fully human. I don't know what to make of it. But yeah, so as they're talking about this, the doors open and he comes in, and it's such a weird scene. Like, he comes in and is glaring at them, and then his son comes running up and is like, "Dad!" And he's like, "Oh, hey there, kiddo." And there's like no room for him to like sit down or anything, which I noticed immediately. And it turns out he isn't staying, but I couldn't help but see, like, there's the one couch that's full because of Ed and Al being massive. And then there's the two armchairs. There's really no room for him if he were going to stay. And, they say something about like long time no see. And he's like, "Long time no see? I just saw you boys at Central Command." And it's so odd because I think what it's supposed to be is more like they're going to try and pretend that they don't like run into him often, but he's not going to shy away from the fact that they just had this really intense like moment of like earlier that day, and he doesn't want them to forget it. I don't know. It was sort of it felt like a power play of just being like, I'm not going to let you direct the narrative and make it seem like I'm lying to my wife. I am just going to call out the fact that we were just there. So that we have like a bit, oh no, I see. His son just gives up his seat. That's what it is. And they're all like having tea together. And he says, "Are you wondering why he doesn't look like us?" And I was kind of like, I think he's just trying to sort of explain because he knows that they know as a homunculus he can't have children. But it was kind of funny because, if you were just on the outside and this wasn't a conflict situation with Ed and Al and him, just kind of being like, are you thinking that he doesn't look like this? It feels kind of weirdly aggressive, especially since the kid, again, is so generic looking that he could look like anybody. He's got just a really boring face and black hair, and he's got black hair. So as far as I'm concerned, the kid looks just like you. Like, in anime terms, that's fine. I don't care. So, oh my God. Michael says, "Still not as awkward as Breaking Bad when Jesse came over for dinner." That scene is one of the most brilliantly acted. I swear to God, Breaking Bad is one of the most perfect shows that's ever been made. And it's just, I don't really ever want to rewatch it, but yeah, that was good shit. So they explain about how they weren't able to conceive and they wound up adopting this kid, and he's our son now. And I'm really like, well, where did you find him? Why? Again, just there has to be a reason for everything, right? Why this kid? And he's patting his son on the head. He's grown into a fine, devoted son. And there's a moment where Ed is watching the two of them together and the way that they are and frowning really heavily. And Bradley looks over at him and is just like, "What's wrong?" And he's just like, "Nothing." And Al says, "Well, it's weird seeing this side of you because we aren't used to it." And this is when he says something kind of interesting. As you can tell, even a man like me has a family waiting for him at home. I'm sure, of course, it's quite different from yours. And it was a weird, like, what we get right after he says that is a montage of Pinnacle and Winry, and then Al, I think, when he actually had a body. So, at first, what I thought he was doing was being like, I know that you think that I'm a monster, but there are even people who love me who would be hurt if something happened to me. But then it seems like all he's doing is just straight up threatening their people. And so it like, it was a weird sort of moment that I felt like I wouldn't really have understood it as a threat without the reaction of Ed and the montage of their people to guide me towards seeing it as a threat, because it just didn't feel like that to me. It just seemed like I don't know. And part of it, again, is because I see what Bradley's doing through the context of what like a regular man would do. And that's part of me being like, okay, so you see that I have people that care about me as well, who would be upset if anything were to happen to me. So keep them in mind. But no, because why would he give a shit about that? That's not what he's doing. So yeah, he gets up at this point and says he has to go back in. He has duties that he has to get back to. And Selim looks genuinely so devastated that his dad is leaving. It's very sad to see how much this kid like cares about his father, knowing that this man really gives no shits for that child. And as he walks out, he says, "Come on." And the camera pans up and he had Hawkeye standing outside the door. And there's something about her just being there, but not being able to interact or anything that feels like really rough. You know, I don't know. There was just the addition of her being his sidekick throughout all of this underscored really hard the situation that we're all in. And as they leave, and it's that perfect, like, golden hour kind of light, which I really did enjoy, Ed and Al comment on how sad it is that they don't know what their father and husband actually is. And Ed gets fed up and is like, you know what? And he starts to sprint and is like, come on, Al, we are going to fucking track this brat down and find out everything we need to know about Alchemist. We cut from there to inside of a train car. It's completely empty except for Scar and I can't remember if that was Yuri or whatever his name is, or Scar, or Marco, sorry. But evidently, the military seem to think they know which train car these guys are in. And they go busting in there, and the place is empty. And then we get Kimblee getting the phone call and being like, so he escaped again. Okay. And it's so funny because when he gets the news that they escaped again, he's not even really mad. He just seems kind of like, yeah, that sounds right. And there's a part of me that kind of respects that. He's not raging against these guys. It seems more like I'm just sort of putting feelers out to see how Scar reacts to us tracking him. And he's avoiding us, which is pretty much how I thought it would go. So that's fine. Come back. You know, it's just very methodical, and it doesn't seem like he's getting emotional about it at all. And when they look at the map and they try and figure out exactly where they could have gotten off, he finds this spot where the train would have to turn and kind of go through the mountains, and it would lose speed. And it would be possible for them to jump off the train in that area when the speed decreases. So then he figures, all right, well, if they did jump off, which way would they go? North or south? And he's staring at the map with his hand to his chin. And he has this moment of like, oh, I've got it. But there's nothing on the map that's readable to me to indicate why he gets that expression, why he thinks he knows. So there must be another piece of information that either I've forgotten or I don't have yet. But he seems pretty confident. So we'll have to see. All right, I'm going to wrap up. But thank you again so much to all of you for hanging out with me in the chat. Thank you to Max for commissioning these episodes. And I will be seeing you all again on Friday. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.